Sharon, can I ask a question to you for legality purposes?
Read where?
Where do I have a lot of paper for you guys?
Time now is 6:30, and we call the April 19th Planning Board meeting to order. Roll call members: Mike Ahern, Chairman; John Lynette, Vice Chair; Rhonda Bishop; Paul Wilson; Pat Roach; John Kelly; Dick Lewis; Selectmen's Representative; Bob Dragon, Alternate. And that's it for that. We have 7 full board members here. Public comments, item number 3. See none?
I guess it's okay.
Brings us item number 4, administrative matters. We are looking for, we have, from the selectmen, we have a reappointment of Rhonda Bishop and Paul Wilson to the board. And one other item is the election of officers for the coming year. We need to elect the chairman and the vice chair. Are there any recommendations or suggestions for the board, from the board? Mr. Inlet.
I would like to nominate Mike Ahern as chairman and Rhonda Bishop as vice chairman.
Do we look for more nominations at this point?
Does a nomination need a second?
Yep.
Yeah? I would second that nomination.
Can we take more nominations at this point? Okay.
Presenting a slate of nominations.
Okay. Seeing no other nominations, we have a first and a second. We can vote. So all those in favor of electing Mike Ahern as chair and Rhonda Bishop as vice chair signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that's done, and that takes effect next immediately.
So you still get to the meeting. But I would just, please, if Rhonda and Paul could stop in and see the town clerk, 8 to 4, Monday through Friday.
All right. Item number 5, correspondence. Sharon?
No.
Okay. Number 6, I'd like the board to just review items 1 through 7, and if there's something from one of the subcommittees or one of the committees that you'd like to add to from last meeting, feel free to raise your hand and we will recognize you. Yes, Mr. Wilson, what item?
Item number 2, Conservation Commission. I wanted to say that we had Conservation Commission organized a trail day in which they did a great deal of trail maintenance, both on Plymouth Mountain and on the Walter Newton Trail. And we were joined by about 15 students and some faculty advisors from the university. The students were from the Geography Club and from Common Ground. They did a tremendous amount of work cleaning up the trails and building bridges over wet areas and so forth. So a really good piece of work got done last Sunday.
Great. Is there anybody else that would like to add any other comments to one of the other items? Okay. Seeing none, that brings us to item number 7. First, the floodplain subcommittee met today, which was Mr. Kelly, Mr. Wilson, and myself. And we are at the end of our, we feel we were at the end of our, what's the word I'm looking for? Duty, I guess. And this is what we came out with for a statement. The floodplain subcommittee, through their deliberations, suggests the following additions to Article 7 of the floodplain development section of the zoning regulations, which is any displacement of the flood carrying capacity of the 100-year floodplain must be compensated on a one-to-one basis within the same floodplain. So we are going to recommend that to this board tonight, and then eventually set up a public hearing on the matter?
Well, that's.
Or is that
I've
something that
checked the
goes to
statutes,
town
but that's-
meeting?
It goes to town meeting because it's a change in
So
the
would there
zoning
be-
ordinance, so that's way.
So that's,
So when
we're
we
way
go-
in advance, ready for
Yeah,
public
when we
meeting.
go through our updates to the zoning ordinance, and there may be more coming this year, we will have those meetings later this year.
Okay,
Yeah, so nothing immediate.
all right, so we're done on that.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yes.
Regarding that? If you can just explain what the purpose of the change is compared to what it states now?
As I understand it, if we have an applicant that is building in the 100-year floodplain, it's been, some applicants are applying mitigation or compensation for filling in floodplain, and then they're having to decrease the level in other areas to compensate that, either on-site or off-site, like we did, recommended to Lowe's or Home Depot.
Correct.
And the smaller applicants didn't seem, kind of fell under the radar. And what we're trying to say is, everybody is going to be treated the same from now on.
Okay.
We had the ability to ask for it, we didn't always ask for it, and now when an applicant comes in, they know, when they see the regulations, they will be required to it. There are exceptions that they could, I believe, go to the zoning board, can get a special exception, I suppose, for certain development. But we want to make sure that the planning board looks at that suggestion, make sure it's grounded in law first. Yes, Mr. Kelly?
Does that pertain to the two new projects that may be coming into the Tenny Mountain that was mentioned?
Well, if they get their
Several weeks ago.
approval before this change, I'll have to.
As long as they get
I'll have to
accepted, as long as your
check
application is accepted before town meeting, if this gets accepted, if this gets voted in by the town.
Okay,
Mr. Wilson?
it has, I understand it has always been the practice of this board, or let's say in the last 10 years, the practice of this board to require on the north side of Tenny Mountain Highway for there to be compensation for any displacement of floodplain.
So this will be in addition. It's expanding,
They're just, it'll be on the,
not just the north side of.
Oh,
on
yeah.
the south side too.
Right, but what I'm saying is this construction that, proposed construction that Mr. Kelly is talking
Okay.
about, I believe.
Already falls under that.
Right.
It does,
Okay,
yeah.
So that, any other questions on that subcommittee? Yes, Mr.
Just,
Lewis.
I was hoping we could get to that meeting and just got tied up at work. Now, one thing that sort of the committee or the board could consider as an alternative to putting this in the zoning ordinance is to put it into the site plan and subdivision regulations, which expedites the process.
That's true, too.
Because it doesn't need to go to
Right.
town meeting.
Right,
And
right.
I mean, really sort of the mitigation is, you know, site plan kind of lays out a lot of design and construction type standards, so that mitigation kind of parallels, you know, what you do in, you know, sort of a typical design, review that an engineering firm or a developer might do.
So in addition to
I think,
zoning ordinance, I would do all three.
yeah, I mean, I
To
think
be
that,
consistent.
I mean, I've just taken a quick look at the language in here. I mean, the language that's in here now is kind of, I mean, in some degree, it's sort of driven by what OEP says you need to have in your floodplain
Exactly.
relative to, like, it's more sort of building oriented as opposed to site development oriented. I mean, certainly, I think you could do it both, but, I mean, a quicker way to do it would be to put it into the site plan regs.
That's a great idea. Why don't we look at, run this by our attorney, town attorney, make sure it's grounded in law, or through our planner,
Yeah. Sure.
and then we would then have to have a public hearing.
It'd be
I
a public
assume.
hearing, yeah.
Right,
But it wouldn't have to be town meeting oriented. It
And
would
then
be-
after the public hearing, then the board would vote to either include it in the site plan.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise you'll have to wait till you're
Right.
January, and you could have development in the interim.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Yes, Mr. Kelly.
Do we have a physical map of the floodway and the floodplain on Tenny Mountain Highway?
Yes, well, we've got-
The other day, and we didn't seem to have it.
Oh, well, we have the flood,
FEMA, I know FEMA, but I
The FEMA,
mean,
the
as far
national
as
flood.
local map is concerned. I know back years ago that when the environmentalists were, in fact, it was the last time we had the master plan, they had a lot of maps, colored maps and everything like
we've got
that.
some of that. I haven't put that all together. I know that DES is doing some additional mapping, but on the Pemmy corridor, but unfortunately, it's not in our area yet.
Yeah.
I was hoping that
Well,
they would show.
I know the Pemmy corridor has a lot of maps like that.
Well, I was going to, I was going to give it to the subcommittee. Lakes Region Planning Commission has some access to that through PERLAC, so I was going to get in touch with Dave Jeffers and see if he could scrounge me up a fairly recent map.
I just think it would be nice to have a jump ahead that everybody, that was a big cry last time as far as like when Lowe's came in, nobody really knew what was in the floodplain or what was in the floodway, and they spent months trying to figure that out, and if we could have that.
So at a public hearing, it would be nice to have all the maps. So everybody can see.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get something that's relatively
New
current.
Hampshire Cooperative Extension up at Woodsville also has that. You actually go online and get it.
I mean, the maps you just
They don't.
held up, those are pretty new, aren't they? Those are the new ones.
2008.
Well,
Yeah.
Are you referring to these?
No, I'm referring to the New Hampshire Cooperative Extension has the soil samples, they have the floodplain.
Yeah, UNH co-op, yeah. No, I know that, so.
I would like to have it so that the ordinary layman could tell.
Well, that's what I mean. What are we
the
looking
difference
for?
between A and AE and AZ and B and all that. Even I get confused with it, and that's what I usually work with a lot of the time.
So we look at a map and we see, one area that's already has to do it.
Yeah.
And then we see a separate map that then includes all the floodplain in the town that now has to follow that.
And it shows it in plain English,
Yeah.
what we were talking about.
But what level of flooding too, that's where that comes, that coding
And
comes
we
in.
will make sure that is all, so everybody can understand.
So if Joe Blow comes in in the public meeting, he can look down and say, okay, that's,
Are we going to have to put this into the site plan regulations as well as what was the other?
You can put it in the subdivision regs.
Subdivision and site plan, because you could do that at a public,
Can we do one public hearing for both?
Yeah,
yeah,
I would think so.
So that's what we
here,
will.
with you folks, not at town meeting.
And then the third will be town meeting for zoning regulations.
Yes. Yes, so we can expedite that.
Okay. All right, that brings us to, again, new business.
I'm sorry, you'll have to excuse me, I had a fly downstairs. I left that pile of stuff in something else, so give me 2 minutes. Maybe everybody, I'll tell you what, I don't know if we want to work on approving some of these meeting minutes, but we could pass them out. This February 2nd one, we didn't get to last time. I looked at zoning really fast, and I thought it was the ZBA minutes, but it's from the public hearing and the motion for the zoning ordinance change from last year before. So if you folks want to look at those, then I'll be right back.
These are, it's emailed. Second? Yeah, okay.
Two.
Yeah, there's February 2nd and April 5th.
Oh, okay, here's another
Everybody
February.
make sure you get each group.
Here's another February, another April.
Need one back?
Are there any more call for it? Anybody do February or an April? I got one. Everybody's got, okay.
So if we look over this, we can approve the minutes tonight.
So the April 5th minutes are minutes that we already looked, well, I guess they both are sets of minutes that we looked at that just have edits in them.
We approved this last time, right? With changes?
With changes, yeah. So this is just, I don't know if we need to reapprove.
But the second?
April 5th.
No, April 5th was the last meeting, so
Edited draft.
So
Nuh-uh.
I don't
Well,
think so.
that's new tonight.
Okay. Well, it's April 5th it was edited, but they were minutes from, you see, these are minutes from January 5th.
Yeah, the ones that were, the 5th.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I need to step away from the table for just a minute.
Okay.
You don't?
Wow, got the committees on the minutes. Committees on
Yeah,
the minutes.
yep.
April 5th. Yeah, we approved those minutes then.
No, March 13th. No, because I hadn't edited them. When it says edited draft, Mary does a preliminary copy, and then I go back in case she doesn't understand the language, so that's how I know. Yes, yep.
Yep, okay, March 15th, the 16th, the 19th of January.
Yeah.
All right.
So, we're going to start with, we're going to kind of go out of order a little bit. We're going to approve minutes first before we move on to item 7, new business. All right, so we're looking at the minutes from February 2nd. Are there any changes to page 1? Page 2? All those in favor of approving the minutes from February 2nd signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Abstain from that, I was absent.
Abstention. Brings us to April 5th. Any changes to page 1?
Could I just suggest that everyone double-check page 3 and make sure I got the committee assignments right? 'Cause it was a little confusing on the video.
Anything on page 2? Okay, well, I'll look at page 3 for a minute. Is everybody in the right subcommittee?
I didn't think, I showed, I thought John Kelly, myself, and Rhonda and Pat Roach were on.
They had something about economic development.
Yeah, okay. So economic transportation, okay, yep, that's
Good.
fine.
Any changes to page 3? Page 4? Page 5? All those in favor of approving the minutes from April 5th signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. So we're done with that. That brings us back to item number 7.
Right, and I have the letter. I have a nagging feeling I passed this out at the last meeting. We didn't get to it, but I passed it out, but anyway, you've got another copy, so. Yep, what this is, oh, I'm sorry, I guess nope, there's 4. This is fairly recent additional correspondence from Harry Blackie. If you recall last meeting, on the 5th, I was waiting to hear back from Attorney Radigan on a couple of issues, so I withheld this for discussion at that point. We are coming up on the May 5th expiration of their 7-year conditional approval. Harry did send me some copies, specific sheets of some of the site plan information, because we just didn't have them anywhere. I don't know where they went to, but that's irrelevant. We have copies, a copy now. And in the correspondence with the copies, he mentioned that he's going to be out of New England on May 3rd and unable to attend that workshop meeting, which is 2 days before his expiration runs out, technically speaking. So he has asked that this board, he's begging your indulgence to give him a, well, he says 30 or 60-day extension, but at the board's pleasure, some sort of extension, so he can be back in town to discuss or to attend a meeting of the board when you do render your final decision on the site plan. So the task right now is for you folks to either approve or deny an extension of his approval for a short interim period.
Is he just gone for a day, 2, 3?
He didn't say. He didn't say. He said he'd just be out on that date, May 3rd, which is our next work session.
So the meeting after that's the 17th.
Ish, yeah. But he said for 30 or 60 days. I mean, I can get back to him. If you want to give me some guidance tonight, I can get back to him. Personally, I don't think we should go way out on a limb, because this has been a 7-year interim
Right.
approval period.
It expires
so-
May 5th, right, of this year?
Correct.
So a couple weeks.
Take it, I mean, the 18th would be the day after that meeting, so we could take it to the 18th.
Whatever.
Is there any board member that feels strongly that would be opposed to going till the 18th, which would be our,
The 17th
The
is,
17th is the meeting,
Is
so...
the meeting.
so it
the 18th.
expires the day after, which would be the 18th.
and is he okay with, will he be back in time? And-
Well, I can check.
But he would like an additional 30 days than that.
30 or 60 days, and I just think that's a little over.
Is that in this letter, Sharon? The 30?
Pardon me?
Is that in this letter?
No,
Oh.
it's in my,
Are we just going to
Mr. Kelly.
reiterate what we've already said so many times? You know, I don't really see what new information he's going to bring forward. It's just going to go on and on and on and on.
well, you're approaching the deadline where you have to decide whether to give him a long-term extension for the site plan approval, or say, no, you need to start over. And there are some salient issues with that, such as the new regs for alteration of terrain, and the fact that there has been, these runoff issues have come to light, and also the fact that Plymouth Woods is now being built, so the scenario has changed since
What-
2005.
What has changed to alleviate the problem he had in the first place? So, you know, all he's going to do is try to convince us that,
Right.
you know, that he's right.
Right, but the thing is, he deserves, a face-to-face with you guys, but it's certainly your prerogative to say no or have a discussion that leads up to some sort of conclusion. But we do have to talk to him. This letter is just more of his opinion on the situation at hand.
Is there any reason why we haven't been approached face-to-face before the 5th? Do you know, I mean, I just don't know whether there is or isn't. I'm just,
No?
why wait until then?
Well, that's what he did.
You know what I mean? And then it doesn't make any sense that it could have been done
I
tonight.
mean, several months ago, we had to discuss, he wanted another opinion or ratification of an opinion from our town council that this was not vested, and Attorney Radigan said definitively, no, it is not.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that was done, so,
So when you read through this, I mean, one of the points he brings up is what is your definition of vesting for this site plan? But that's neither here nor there right now. So, I mean, just,
Isn't vesting very well defined in the dictionary?
was it,
How about the original approval back in 2005? What did that define vesting in any way?
there were some conditions, we'll see, it's a twofold process, if I remember correctly. It was conditional. And then we had the 7-year extension thing going on. I was just going to say something else. In Attorney Radigan's last letter, he kind of admonishes the board a little bit to come up with some examples of what active and substantial development could be, which is a task that you folks have to do. That's something we need to get into the site plan and subdivision regulations. I mean, to just make sure it's clear. Because his subdivision, the vesting was defined. But I guess the problem that's coming up, or at least it's the way it's being presented, was that Mr. Blackie at the time had made the case that the vesting as defined, which was the roads, Crescent Street and everything else, was supposed to theoretically apply to both subdivision and site plan. That's not the way the board saw it, whatever, that's for discussion. So now he's coming back to you and asking two questions. Will you extend this original approval in the site plan? And secondly, if you will, then what are your definitions for active and substantial vesting that he can aspire to with this extension? But you may not want to extend it at all.
My thought on that is that if we do not approve an extension, we then could correct some of the errors that we had in getting. And we now know that there are some things up there that may have either been overlooked or just weren't taken care of. So if we vest this, we've still got all the problems that we had in the original approval. If we don't vest it, we can start out fresh and maybe correct some of the errors or misguidance or whatever you want to call it, and start it over again. Now, I'm not too sure whether that the whole process has to be done over again if we don't vest it.
Well, yeah, you don't want to use the word vesting because that's not applicable right now.
Well,
Approved. But because of the change, the more stringent regulations and alteration of terrain permits, which is going to be required, which Dick has mentioned before, it's going to be a whole new ball of wax.
Excuse me, just a point of order. I'd like to get a clarification. It's my understanding that we don't have under consideration tonight whether this is considered to be active and substantial development. What's under consideration tonight is whether we'll give the applicant one more month to come in here and to make his case, to speak to us. Isn't that the case?
If that is the case, can we put in some type of wording that this will be the final extension that he can require, because he can ask for extensions himself for a long time.
Oh,
So,
extension of yeah, we have to differentiate
right.
which extension it is.
But I mean,
Find a
as
different
far
word or
as his
something.
meeting with us,
Right.
that we should set another date within a reasonable time and say this is the final one. You can change your plans, whatever you want to do, but that was the final extension for you to come in front of us.
Rather than the approval itself. It's just the interim period you're extending.
Right, right.
Mr. Roach?
Yeah, I'd like to make 2 points. First, I kind of agree with Mr. Kelly that I don't know what else we're going to hear from him that we haven't heard before, personally. But also, just as far as active substantial development, I mean, I may be looking at this too simply, but to me, active development means something's going on. Nothing's gone
Well,
on
there's
there
been
in
nothing.
years. So
nothing.
I think we could clearly define that there's no active development going on up there.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and I mean, I feel for him with the whole economy
Right.
situation he's gone on.
He's just
but-
saying in this letter that if he does obtain an approval extension beyond May 5th, in that case, could you please define what active and substantial development will be?
Right.
In that
I think we could
scenario.
do that, because I think it's pretty clear there's nothing actively going on up there,
But,
you know.
well, I won't sidetrack us.
Yeah, it's okay, I just,
It's okay.
Yes, Mr. Dragon.
Did our town attorney get a copy of this letter? I don't see where a carbon copy was sent. The reason I ask is he's quoting Attorney Radigan on a number of things, then he goes down to say that this is what he recommends.
The quoting comes from
As far
attorney,
as the following,
yes,
what I'm talking
attorney,
about.
yeah, this is like letter number 4,
yeah,
with the counterpart from Attorney
Yeah.
Radigan. We're done with Attorney Radigan because it's cost him fortune. And he's been very straight about it. What Mr. Blackie is quoting in this letter is Attorney Radigan's previous response, which was before this date, it was in February. So he's just making a case for himself based on what Attorney Radigan said as guidance to us.
But you still, the legal counsel hasn't got a copy of this letter here.
I don't think
the
he...
continuity is very important about what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
no, I understand
The
that.
outside looking at it, so I want to be sure what's quoted here and what he is saying is that our attorney is in.
If you have your previous copy of in Attorney Radigan's letter, this is page 2, dated February 17th, he states, so if it's quoted, it's in that letter.
What?
Well, our correspondent should have the principles involved, excuse me,
Oh,
John.
yeah, you're right.
Yes, Mr. Renlet.
I guess it's my thought, and what John said too. I think May 5th is the date. Attorney Radigan's letter was back in February. We've had all this other time for them to arrange meetings. And I think we just, my thoughts are we stick to the May 5th date. And make a motion and stay there.
Any other comments? As I understand it, Mr. Blackie came in front of the board and,
Twice, I think, didn't he?
well, the first time he, he let us know that the economy is tough and he normally would have gone through with it, and his intention was to sell them, but he couldn't. And I think the board, was very sympathetic to his comments. There's been some information and some facts what seem like facts have come to light since then with the plight of the landowners on Page Street.
Yeah.
Page Street, which maybe skews our thinking a little bit. At least it does for me, to go out and be sympathetic and do what we can for them in the light of the economy when we've got residents that we're representing as well that are having a difficult time on Page Street every time we get a flood event or a storm event. It's a lot harder to, I don't know if I'm speaking out of school, but it's a lot harder to play ball, I guess, knowing what's going on Page Street.
Well, the original premise with Mr. Blackie coming before the board, he knew that he was approaching the May 5th deadline this year, and he wanted to make the case that everything was fully vested so he could proceed however he wanted to, blah, blah, blah. And so we had to run that by our town council, and our town council said no the first time, and he said no the second time. So it definitively is not vested. So as the date comes up, that's what we're looking at. Now, if it were to come back again under a new application, or if you were to make an extension of this approval, which it doesn't sound like you're going to, definitely the abutter concerns would come in there. I mean, they're there, but they don't technically, yeah, we've got to be careful not to mix our media,
Right,
because we want to make
that's-
sure we give him, you know.
Because we shouldn't be
the
looking at
best-
that issue, really, to make the decision that he's asking.
Correct. But we can, if there is an extension, and as we've said before, that issue will definitely come up in terms of being looked at quite severely, if you will, with a new alteration of terrain permit, because his has expired, and the rules are much more strict.
So all we're doing is giving him till a certain time to come back to this board
Right.
to plead his case.
But if,
Right,
right,
that's
but if
right.
you say, no, we're not giving you an extension either then or now, if you feel you're ready for it, then he doesn't need to plead his case about the language of vesting, although that's an issue
And at that
the board
point,
needs to take up
we're
in
still
general.
thinking of Page Street as we're looking at the term of vesting. So is there, yes,
Well, I mean, we voted on March 15th to accept Attorney Radigan's
Correct.
position on that it's not
Not
vested, so I mean,
vested, right.
that's a moot issue at this point.
Yeah, not the vesting per se, but the terminology for vesting. Because as I said, originally, he thought what was articulated for subdivision vesting also applied to subdivision. So
I'm
that's
sorry, who is he?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Blackie. That's the whole premise of his...
Mr. Blackie was assuming the vesting
He
in
was
the
getting a 2 for
subdivision
1. Right.
was vesting for the
Right.
second
That's
area.
been his whole
for-
argument
for
the whole
mountain
time.
and the condos.
And Attorney Radigan has said definitively no.
Right, and that's,
So that's out the door.
we've had that letter twice,
Yeah.
and I mean, we're just kicking,
Yeah, the
to
can.
phase Mr. Kelly, we're kicking a can down the road if we continue. You know, I'm saying we just, in my opinion, make a motion, there's a May 5th deadline. We've met in, I think, January, and then in March twice this year, and nothing has changed.
Yeah, I just brought this to you because I didn't know if the board felt as a whole, if you had gone over this enough times, or if you needed to meet one more time.
This is the, yeah, well, if I could speak, this is the first time I think that I've seen this letter.
Yes, it's the first time I've passed it out.
So, I'll be making a decision, and frankly, I haven't had a chance to read this in the way that it needs to be read. So, I would, in my opinion, I would rather not shut the door. I'm not eager to see this thing getting kicked down the road continuously, but to allow the applicant to come in 30 days does not seem unreasonable, in the sense that it gives us a chance to review this in the light of Radigan's letters as well.
Does this letter indicate any other views, legal views, or is this just Mr. Blackie trying to prove that he would not like to have this shut the door?
My take on this is Mr. Blackie is hoping that you will consider an extension of his site plan approval, and if so, he would like to discuss with you at that point in time what are the rules, definition of the vesting that, or active and substantial development to vest that approval. He's trying to get a final thing. This is his,
Well, we have legal counsel write him a letter telling him what his opinion is, what vesting is, and being active and all that stuff.
well, the vesting, and Dick can help me out on this, the vesting is the prerogative of any board. You have to decide what your standards, your parameters, your thresholds are. So, you know, if somebody gets partially through a project and all the zoning changes, that they're not penalized for it, or if they do nothing and they sit on a project forever, they don't get rewarded for doing nothing and the zoning's changed.
Well, hasn't that already been decided?
Or the subdivision.
What's that?
Right. He's not vested, but he's asking you to come up with a definition if, in your wisdom, at this May 5th meeting, you extend his approval. It's apples and oranges a little bit.
Right. He's saying if we approve an extension, then he wants to know what vested is.
Right.
So that if
He's being
if we
optimistic.
give him a one-year extension,
Right.
what does he have to do in that 1 year to make that vested?
Forever and ever, amen.
Yeah. And
My whole thought is that there were a lot of mistakes made on this first approval. We have a brand-new board, 99% of it, and we have heard what vesting is. We've got 2 or 3 opinions from the legal counsel. I don't know what else to do except to have him come in and plead on sympathy to get him to do something that he should have done in the first place.
And I have sympathy, but I also don't know how we can tie it into taking care of the concerns at Page Street, if we could.
Well, if,
that's,
yeah, that's separate. If, no, I'm sorry, but if you meet at whatever date, Paul feels he needs 30 days to just digest all this, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but if you meet as a board on a regular work session to consider extending the original approval, and decide no, then there's no recourse. You don't need to have a conversation about what you can tell him he needs to do to vest the site plan, because the whole deal's off the table. He's just looking for, he's hoping against a stacked deck that you're going to say no, you're going to say yes, and then he can get to the definition of it. I mean, that's my take on it.
So we need a motion at this point, it sounds like, on whether to grant him
A meeting date extension
a
beyond
meeting date
May.
extension, not necessarily an extension.
No, you're not talking about an approval extension. As John said, this is only a meeting date. We have to be very clear of this in the minutes.
That's reasonable.
Yep. So, do we have a motion?
Can I ask?
Yes, Ms. Bishop.
If it's canceled on May 5th, that's when it expires, right?
Correct.
Why would we meet after that for him to talk on something that's already expired?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well,
How can,
I mean,
Basically, what my understanding is he's asking for that expiration not to come into effect until he has a chance to meet with us, whenever that might be. So if we were to set it to the 15th, then essentially we'd be granting him
An extension to,
10-day extension.
Yeah,
so we're doing 2 extensions, a meeting extension as well as giving him the extension to the meeting day. No?
extending for the development?
it's all the same.
It's all the same.
You're extending
Yeah.
approval by 10 days.
So we're extending the,
Yes, so that he can
Everything.
be present.
Right.
otherwise,
And have
the meeting is moot at that point.
Right. I mean, if we extend the approval to the 17th, and if he doesn't appear on the 17th, so that means there's no additional information that's come before us, then it's simple. Then the application then the approval has expired.
I mean, I can't see any more information coming before you. He could, if he were given a chance to speak, and that's up to you, it's up to the chair, he could, spin things or reiterate. I don't mean to be derogatory, but I don't think you need to rehash this again.
Mr. Kelly?
Could we have legal counsel on that? It's a pretty good subdivision, and I don't know really what I'm talking about on that, and I don't think a lot of the people on the board and he's a great salesman. So I don't want to have this extension of this new approval completed on sympathy. I'd like to have legal counsel here, so if he came up, then they could either approve it or shoot it down, and we wouldn't have to continually go on and on and on for a long time. If he doesn't have it, and Blackie says something we don't quite understand, then we got to go to legal counsel, and then we got to have another meeting. It's been since 2005. I think it should be something should be concluded somewhere along the way.
Well, legal counsel has given you his opinion, and now you just need an opportunity, which you're actually somewhat taking now, to, never mind the extend the date thing, to inform yourselves, and then vote on it whenever you decide to vote on it.
Right, but with legal counsel, he would be stopping his tracks if he was trying.
Well, the guy charges $400 an hour, John, so plus mileage, and he's already said,
Like he's got 15 minutes to prove his case.
well, but
Still gonna be an hour.
I think we've done that.
The first
All due
Thursday in May
respect.
is our work session,
Right.
and that is the 3rd of May.
Correct. And he can't make that meeting, and the end of his 7-year approval,
It's the 5th.
original approval, runs out 2 days after that.
But that at least gives us
Should've been earlier.
time to digest that letter.
I see.
So we could,
We have a chance to meet, we have a chance to meet
Right,
again.
that's why
And that would still
that's
give
what I
us-
conveyed to him.
And that still gives us, you know, time to see, we can still make the decision to extend it then.
You're absolutely right. He can't make that meeting, so that could be a discussion period for you without his influence.
Could we put his time slot value in a later part of the meeting so that we could discuss this letter? We'll all read it, we'll all digest it. Probably I won't, but the rest of the intelligent people are going to digest this letter, and they're going to then have talked to each other, and at least be in accordance when he comes in. Because we just read the letter, and he comes in at the very first, and he tells us how.
Well, he won't be at that meeting.
We're going to meet as a work session on the 5th.
Well, on the 3rd.
Third, I'm sorry, on the 3rd. But the earliest that we would meet with him would be on the 17th, would be on a meeting.
If we decided to extend it.
If it's, that's right.
All right, so do we have a motion on the table that we may have to?
We better re-qualify it because it's...
Well, do we need a motion? I
We
mean,
have one already on the table that we may have to have it withdrawn then. Do we have one? No, we don't have a motion.
It was, if there was, it was never seconded.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then it's not
So-
motion for.
So we'll just have our regular May 3rd meeting?
And continue this
Discuss
item
this.
to our work
That's all
session
you
meeting.
need to say. There you go.
Could
All
I just,
right.
maybe just suggest, maybe just kind of to follow up on the comment earlier, could you maybe scan the February 17th meeting from Attorney Radigan and email it out?
I did, but I can do it again. You've all had a copy of it, but,
Yeah, I think it's maybe in another.
well, you know, if you can give me a few minutes tonight, you can go
right.
away with it.
Right,
And
well,
you'll
that's a good
have-
idea. All right, so
All right.
But the other thing I was going to, with the board now kind of having access to a plan, the approved plan from 2005 or whatever it is, maybe get a copy of the decision of approval also, get that scanned and sent out.
Sure,
If
sure.
there's something in there that just
Yeah, I mean,
needs to be considered.
I'm happy to do it again. I think we had this at the outset, but this has been dragging on forever, so.
Yeah, it's been-
Yeah,
and I
it's
may
way
not-
too
I may
much
not have
paper.
gotten the-
I can't even remember what I've given out to you. But maybe before everybody splits tonight, if you give me 5 minutes, I can get all that stuff copied, and you can all take it with
Did
you.
you indicate that there would be stricter meetings in the near future, or already?
Alteration of terrain, which is huge. He's disturbing a lot of area, and the drainage impacts and everything. In 2005, the rules were our town engineer said they were very lax, but they're very stringent now. So theoretically, this project may not pass muster at the state level to get the permits, because they're a lot stricter about runoff and drainage.
Give him an extension?
Oh, he's still got, oh, yeah, his permit's expired. His original permit has expired.
So he'd have to be governed by the new rules.
Oh, absolutely.
Not grandfathered.
Oh, no.
I mean, the potential exists that after he gets done with DES and the alteration of terrain, that the plan may be somewhat different, a lot different, radically different than
Exactly.
what was
Exactly.
signed off on 5 years ago. So
That's what you're referring to, it's February 21st.
do you need that to photocopy?
That was received the 21st. Sure, that's handy, and,
All right, so that brings us to item number 8, unfinished and other business. So now we're,
Okay,
Sharon, you want to go over the subcommittee? Or do you want me to go over that, or?
why don't you, if you wouldn't mind, here's everybody's copy, and don't you dare adjourn until I come back, because I have more paper to pass out. But I'll go copy the Blackie stuff.
So we've already gone over from the minutes. It was February or
Oh, mine's
April.
full copies, so those two. All right, I will get the notice of decision and this, and I'll be right back.
So I believe this is the same committee,
Yeah, I took it from
subcommittees.
the minutes, so it should be accurate.
I'm not sure how much we need to go over, because we talked about having a subcommittee meeting at this meeting, and maybe breaking out. So I'm not sure how much research we've all gotten to do for the background, but I'm willing to listen to the board members on what they'd like to do at this point in reference to the master plan update. Mr. Kelly.
To go back to what I said the last meeting, the last master plan participants were more interested in the problems they were having at that time than they were in a true master plan. Is supposed to be a very general article that will lead the town in a certain direction. But it's not whether we should have school buildings or, no specific areas, no specific anything like that. It's a mission plan type of thing. It's not something that we are trying to stop anybody from doing anything within the town. And I think they were so concerned about Tenny Mountain Highway that they just completely got in the fog and never came out of it.
So I'm almost thinking at this meeting today, we could almost put together a mini mission statement, which gives us kind of a direction or objectives that we want to try and achieve throughout this process.
Right.
Refer back to, is that what you're saying, Mr. Kelly?
Right, but I think that has already been viewed as far as a general master plan is concerned.
But as far as the review of it and bringing this to conclusion for the next year, hopefully, we can get it done. We kind of want to give this board some direction on your suggestion of making it more general, more simple.
Right, more general and more to the fact that it's a mission plan type of thing. What do we want to go forward with? Do we want to be completely involved with nonprofit organizations and have those people the only people that would be able to go into Plymouth, or how much more the college should grow and stuff like that, and see what kind of a direction that we want Plymouth to go in. Whether they want to get to modern times, or whether they want to stay back in the 30s.
Any other thoughts on where you want to go with this tonight?
I mean, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea just for everyone to take, the next couple of weeks and, sort of continue the review of the materials that Sharon's passed out already as far as the individual sections and how it matches up with these subcommittee assignments, and then maybe come in at that May 3rd meeting.
May
We're
17th.
going to be here anyway at the May 3rd.
Yeah.
So we'll come back, and that would be probably a better meeting to
Yeah.
discuss this. We'll have nothing else really on the agenda except for Blackie.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
And I guess the other thing I was going to maybe add is that, if people wanted to, take a shot at, things that, could be included in, let's say, a mission statement, they could be forwarded to Sharon, and I'd be happy to work with Sharon on, put something together that we could get out to people for that
I know that
May 3rd meeting.
6 years ago, when we were working on the land use part of it, we put together a mission statement of what that subcommittee of interested individuals, we put a mission statement on what we were trying to achieve. And we kept looking at that every once in a while as we were working on it, and it seemed to help.
Yeah, so it acts as a nice guidepost.
And all it needs to be is maybe a sentence or two.
So each committee has its own mission statement?
No, I think it can be kind of generalized. I think.
On this little old thing here, Town of Plymouth Master Plan 208, it says development of the master plan is a process whereby a community seeks to understand where it is today, its assets and profits, and where it's going to, where it's going, the extent of the future needs, and it keeps on going. Everybody should have one of these. Then it says down here, so what is the best interest of the community as a whole, not just one property owner or one interest group. And I think that's where we fell on the face the last time. They didn't look at the mission statement.
And I know that at the public hearing that we had at the gymnasium at the elementary school, Donnie Jocks got up with this book, and it tells us, we're directed by the New Hampshire Planning and Land Use Regulations.
Yeah. Yep.
And that directs us on what to do. Maybe we could pull a sentence or two out of that
Yeah.
and kind of blend it with our thoughts, and that will be the start.
I think the master plan, that part, the mission part of the introduction mission statement is okay. It's just that they didn't quite abide by what it was. The coach and the referees sort of got lost in the shuffle.
Should we be working on a new mission statement for the complete master plan, or a mission statement for the committees? What are we focusing on?
I would think that if we read that the mission statement in the master plan, it was all right. The only problem is, I don't know how many people on this committee really would be able to tell you what that was.
I know that one goal that I would like to see is that when someone comes to town looking to build or do something, they look at that master plan, it's pretty daunting.
I know.
I would love to see that a whole lot thinner.
Well, I would too, because they seem to stop all progress of anybody coming from and I wrote this damn thing more times than I wish I could. But there's a lot of it.
So we're looking possibly at pulling something out of this book. We're looking to make our own master plan much shorter, easier to read,
More general.
much more general.
Yeah.
Mike,
Mr.
can I
Chairman.
ask a question? Will the board be soliciting, even though we'll be having public hearings on the issues here, or changes or updates or whatever on the master plan, will we be soliciting any volunteers from town taxpayers who may have some interest and can help? This is a daunting task for just a group of people here. Hopefully we'd have some people that may have some interest, that may have some input, that would make our jobs a little bit easier.
We did talk about that at the last meeting.
Did we? Okay.
It would be nice to put together a schedule, and the schedule can change, when we would, when our job is,
See if there's any volunteers.
then where we want to introduce volunteers to help us, and then the ultimate goal is when it goes.
I have a real problem with that, because every time you bring a person in, unless it is on a technical matter or something like that, you are going to get special interest. You're going to get the interest of that person. The guy down here on Main Street will come in and talk to you, and the only thing he wants to do is to evaporate the rest of the world except Main Street. The people don't ever say anything in Tenny Mountain. I don't think we've ever had anybody in all the time I can remember, anybody coming in from Tenny Mountain saying this is what they want or whatever. They might come in for for, like Lowe's or something, come in and for an application or something, but I've never seen where they've actually come into a meeting. But the university will have a special interest, the hospital will have a special interest, the firemen will have a special interest, the Plymouth will have a special, the police. So if we just keep it within ourselves.
I don't go with that. I don't agree with you. I think special interests, excuse me, are important and can be legitimate, John, not just, you know, a negative. It can be a positive. So I think we have to allow, or we should allow, more help and volunteers and people with ideas. That's my feeling, Joe.
Mr. Renlet.
Yeah, I think we talked at the last meeting, and what we decided is the board would work on these different areas probably for 3 to 4 or 5 months, and then some of the other people that had worked on it before,
Right.
we would bring them in, we would show them what we had,
Good,
then we
yeah.
could have
Before we go to
2 months,
public
2
hearing.
months
Good, yeah.
more meetings
You know,
to iron
that's
that
good.
out, and then do a public
Yeah.
hearing.
You want to
Put 2 minutes
familiarize
colors of
yourself
paint
with what
together.
it is you're
Yeah,
talking
and you
about
can
before
get-
you
yeah, I
ask
know.
people
Right.
to help you.
Exactly, because
We're
others,
still
yeah.
going to have a little bit of,
So I think by our May 3rd meeting,
as long as it's
we have
limited.
two objectives. One is to come up with some sort of mission statement for the task at hand. The other one is to come up with a schedule, penciled-in schedule of something that might change, but at least it gives us some kind of,
Right.
itinerary or whatever.
If you
yeah.
recall, I did hand that stuff out, and I have lots of extra copies if you need it.
What's, you mean that piece
Well-
of the master?
Of the sections and
The
things like
mission
that.
statement, I gave you examples of the last one, and I also gave you copies of the meetings, public hearings, it was just, yeah, so that should help guide. Not that you have to adhere to it, but it's a help.
I have a question then.
Yes,
Does the
Mr. Roach.
subcommittee meet on specific, on planning rules and subcommittees meet separately? Is there any, there's no real specific guidelines for that, is there?
we could
Something
talk
I was
about
gonna
that as
throw
well.
up. I was going
When they
to
would
say,
meet.
when we meet, maybe the subcommittees, like, should meet like an hour
Just
before the meeting,
before,
so
yeah.
that we can
Right,
go over
right.
our department and
And
throw
then
it
bring
out.
it to the board at
Yeah,
large.
you know.
Each, yeah.
So why don't we meet May 3rd at 5:45, 45 minutes before the meeting, for the,
Sure.
for all of us to meet before the meeting starts? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, why not?
Or if it gets over
Individuals
early,
Of those, well,
Right, we would break up into
What
our
did you say?
subcommittees at that point.
right.
Me too.
And then we come together for our meeting. We discuss
5:45.
Blackie, and then we will finalize our mission statement, some sort of itinerary, check off dates, schedule, and
It's a work
we will do
session,
that.
John. Real
And
work.
possibly come up with some sort of schedule of when the subcommittee might meet. Or each subcommittee can pick their own
Yeah.
time to meet.
Right.
Okay. All right, so that finishes up that item. We're moving on to public comments, item number 9.
Mr. Kelly, I was on the original master plan committee back in 1984, and I've had a few inputs along the way. So, public inputs obviously will represent how they see Plymouth from their piece of the world. But there are some of us that are general in nature that could give some guidance. Like, you remember when we were looking at the agricultural zone, and we had an inventory of usable real estate in the town of Plymouth, and they had written off all the hills as totally useless commercial-wise. And so I brought up the fact that ski industry really likes hills. So public input from walks of life, not a bad thing. I do agree this getting the master plan and of the intent and purpose of these committees is a good idea. And I think we also need to look at reducing master plan products so that it is something that we could actually get out into the public. We have got the best secret for a master plan. The town is in a shop downstairs, and you can come in once a year look at, but we need to get it out and get it so that the people can embrace it by understanding it and say, no, this is what we are, this is what we intend to do, and be part of the process, so that it doesn't just stay on the shelf somewhere. But anyway, I would like to be part of any of these subcommittees, or I'd like to be part of the process, since I have a couple of years of history of the master plan process.
I have you listed, Frank, by name.
Oh, that's right, there is.
Good volunteer,
All right.
too.
That brings us to item number 9, is it?
Make one more comment.
Yes.
One last comment. Is the master plan available on the website?
I believe so. I believe so. And the implementation section of the master plan with the checklist is really, really good. Speaking of master plans, I did grab a couple of the RSAs that just, once again, speak to
Yes.
what, how, and
Beautiful.
why to do this.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Everybody got one?
Cool.
There you go, Frank. Yep, you bet. Here.
The next one?
Oh, I do, yes. Oh. You want one or you don't? You want?
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I have paper to pass out before we.
Before we adjourn?
Yes.
Okay, why don't we pass that out?
Okay, this is, Dick had asked for the notice of decision regarding the condo site plan, condominium area site plan. It's two-sided. You make sure you see the front and the back. And here, Rhonda graciously provided a copy of, another copy of that letter of the 17th. So everybody gets 2 more sets. I'll take it, you don't have back. And we also,
These are the Radigan.
the master, the zoning ordinance, you did that one deletion of a term, so it updated the document. So I've got 3 pages which technically show the updates, actually there's 4. So you all want to stick this in your zoning ordinance book, or you shall not be current. Oh, here's the bicolor. I know that. Oh, well, now we yeah. FYI, the Baker River Watershed Association is having their annual meeting at the Forest Service headquarters in Campton, the new forest office, April 26th, if anybody's interested. That's all I have.
All right, that brings us to item number 10. Do we have a motion? Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Signify.
Aye.
All right. Meeting is adjourned at 7:39.